This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
Welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I will be joined by Project Spurs Director of Digital Content, Joe Garcia. In this episode, Joe and I will review the moves the Spurs made at the trade deadline on Thursday and what the roster looks like now going forward with the rest of the season remaining. Let's go ahead and jump right into this episode. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I think we should be asking how Spurs fans are doing because I think they're a little bit, heartbroken right now.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, they lost some better players and maybe, they didn't make the splashiest of moves, but they got some, as we're going to go into this, Joe, they got some real draft assets, San Antonio. So, Joe, let's go ahead and recap this week for San Antonio. I'll get your thoughts on the moves that they made this week. So the Spurs did participate in 3 trades on this entire week, this final week of the trade deadline week. And I do want to note that Joe and I are recording this on a Thursday afternoon post deadline. So let's go back to Tuesday. The Spurs acquired former Spur Dewayne Dedmon from the Miami Heat for a 2028 second-round pick, and San Antonio sent the Heat cash considerations. Then on Thursday, just recently, a few hours ago, the Spurs actually waived Dedmon, so Dedmon is no longer on the team. Then on Thursday, technically it was late Wednesday evening, Jakob Poeltl got traded to Toronto for Khem Birch, a top 6 protected 2024 first-round pick, and a 2023 and 2025 second-round pick from Toronto. Then we do want to note that Birch has $6.6 million remaining for this season and $6.9 million guaranteed for next season. Then on Thursday, about an hour before the trade deadline ended, Josh Richardson was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans for Devontae Graham and a 2024, 2026, 2028, and 2022 second round picks, should I say. And this was reported by Jeff McDonald of the San Antonio Express News because the Spurs haven't, at the time that Joe and I are recording this, the move has not been made official just yet by the team. The reason why the Spurs got more than just one pick for Richardson is because Graham has multiple years on his deal. He's making $11.5 million this season. Next season, he's guaranteed for $12.1 million. And then in 24-25, he has $2.9 million guaranteed out of $12.6 million. So he has multiple years guaranteed. So where does the roster stand now? The Spurs have 14 players on guaranteed deals and 2 players on two-way contracts. We do want to note that this trade deadline came and went with Doug McDermott still on the team. The Spurs do have one open roster spot. They actually have a lot of cap space still left. They have $25.5 million in cap space this season alone. And again, if they don't reach the salary floor, they're about $13.2 million from that number. Then that number is going to get divided amongst the players, and they're going to get a nice check at the end of the year. They project for next offseason to have $46.7 million in max cap space. With Graham and Birch now on the roster. And just look at this, what the Spurs came away with here. The Spurs end up, for 2 players that they were going to lose regardless in free agency, Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson, they end up coming away with 1 first-round pick and 7 second-round picks in this week. Of course, they also added Dedmon and then waived him. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on this week? You mentioned how, Spurs fans might feel. What were your thoughts initially?
Well, I think it was smart moves on the part of the team, especially by, Brian Wright. I think a lot of Spurs fans need to kind of tip their hat to him because really at this point in time, you're going ahead and you're trading players that you could realistically lose to free agency. So garnering picks, however, let's say the number of picks are going to be in question with Spurs fans because they're never going to be happy with the amount of picks that they're getting in return for the assets that the Spurs are giving up. But, getting these picks is going to just be great for the team moving forward because they're in a rebuilding phase at this point in time, but having this, plethora of picks at your disposal, this coming draft, you have the 2024, 2026, 2028, 2029, you have 2 second round picks. This is all great for San Antonio Spurs fans. The Spurs are loaded with picks. And I think one of the things that we can take away from this is the fact that they can either decide to move up in the draft if they wanted to go ahead and maybe make a deal with another team if they feel that there's a player that they have to have that's further up in the draft, or they can go ahead and just stand pat and pick up some players and go ahead and start retooling and really getting some players that can help fill roster spots that the Spurs are sorely needing to fill. So either way, I think it's not sexy by any means, but I think the moves are very smart on the part of the Spurs.
Exactly. Just the fact that you had 2 players who could walk away for nothing this summer, Richardson and Poeltl, and you end up coming away with the first that you wanted for Poeltl, and you end up getting all those second round picks. And I know that they had these players that they added, Khem Birch and Graham have deals for next season. And yes, it's going to impact the cap space. But I mean, what were they going to do with like $65 million in cap space? There's not a lot of marquee free agents this coming off season. And plus, even if those players were available, like marquee names, they're not going to come to San Antonio, who's about to, who a team that's just like in the rebuilding phase right now. Now, one great thing is you added was just the fact that, in future drafts, if they do want to move up, they have all these picks they can put in a package, but also, let's just say they end up getting like Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson, a player like that. And then, a year or two from now, they want to add, they may not be able to sign a free agent in the off season. Well, then they could actually try to package another star to add to that group down the road by packaging some of these picks. So again, it gives them a lot of flexibility, and it just gives them a lot of chances that if they're going to be in this rebuilding phase for multiple years, well then, hey, you get different cracks at trying to get a player to turn into something down the road with all these different draft picks. So again, I think they had a really good week, considering that they could have lost these two players for nothing, and they had all that cap space, and they still have a lot of cap space this coming week.
They could actually even still go after Jakob Poeltl in free agency if that's what they were supposed to do.
Exactly, because they're gonna have a lot of just a lot of space
as long
here.
As they don't bring back Bryn Forbes, because I saw that they were waiving him, and how Coach Pop loves him some Bryn Forbes. I'm like, let's bring back Patty Mills instead of Bryn Forbes. That way Patty can finish his career out in the silver and black.
That out of today's trade deadline on Thursday, that was my favorite tweet. So what ended up happening was I took a picture of when it said the Wolves waived Bryn Forbes, and I put it on Twitter. I just blasted it, didn't say anything. And then of course, like the first reaction I get is that one where Pops like has like luggage and he's like running like the tunnel. And so somebody tweeted, I retweeted it, of course, and everyone got mad. And I was like, yes, this is just so much fun. And Matthew Tynan also made a comment about Bryn Forbes coming back to San Antonio. We were just, of course, we're all just joking around, but I mean, hey, the Spurs are they have an open roster spot. So again, I don't know if it's going to end up being, a veteran player like Forbes, or it could be like, I think Gorgie Jang's definitely in play to come back, because they've re-signed him 3 times this season. I think they really like him for that locker room.
Yeah, how many 10-day contracts can they have the poor guy sign?
Well, not on him. He can't do anymore. He's already reached his max, but they can sign him for the rest of the year if they want to, for a full guarantee deal. There's also players like Charles Bassey who they might want to explore, taking out off a 2-way contract and putting him on the San Antonio roster. So there's definitely a lot of moves that they can still, not really trades they can make, but they can definitely do some signings with that extra roster spot. And so now, Joe, let's look at what the roster looks like going forward with 27 games left in the season. So a lot of injuries like we've been seeing night to night. The Spurs are on that 10-game losing streak. And so let's first focus on the guards and the wings. I'm going to just talk about the healthy players for now. Doug McDermott's still on the team. You got Stanley Johnson. Malachi Branham's been really improving, although he had 2 kind of rough games the last 2 nights. We don't exactly know what's going to happen with Devontae Graham. Is he going to be part of the rotation? Are they going to try to work on a buyout with him? I doubt that's going to happen, because he has multiple years left on his deal. And then we know that Vassell's going to come back at some point this season, but right now he's still injured. And then just like on the night-to-night injury report, Keldon Johnson's dealing with something. Trey Jones is dealing with an injury. Romeo Langford and Blake Wesley. It's kind of in and out at Austin. And then we look at the forwards and bigs. We're going to assume that Zach Collins is now the starting center with Jakob Poeltl gone, since he used to start for Poeltl when Poeltl was injured. Jeremy Sohan's kind of been dealing with some injuries as well. You have Keita Bates-Diop still as a veteran player. Charles Bassey's kind of been in and out with Austin. Isaiah Roby's still on the team, and then you got Dominic Barlow in and out with Austin, and then also Khem Birch. Where will he play in the rotation? So what is your just outlook on this roster going forward for these final 27 games of the year?
Oh man, if I'm being realistic with you, it's going to be hard pressed for this team to win more than a handful of games. I think as we start getting close to the end part of the season. I mean, you still have to go through the rodeo road trip, and then you have the All-Star break coming up. Then you're going to have the month of March coming in real quick here. And then as soon as it starts, it seems like it ends. And then you have the end of the season coming up in April. So, I mean, being realistic, I mean, it's okay if the Spurs start getting a little better as far as the younger core, but still losing games. I mean, realistically, if they win 8 games here on out, it's a win. But if they don't, it's okay, Spurs fans. But looking at Khem Birch, for example, he's a body. The Spurs just got rid of a center in Jakob Poeltl. They need a body to fill a roster position. That's what Khem Birch is going to do. And how many minutes is he realistically going to play? I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to wind up going, with somebody else at this point. Are they really going to go with Zach Collins, or what are they going to do? I have no idea at this point. I mean, they could get Gorgie Dang, like you said, and then put him in the mix. Are they going to start Collins and have Gorgie come off the bench? Who knows? I really don't know. And, that's the I guess the part that's kind of scary in a sense, because you see what the Spurs are like without, some of their key players, especially coming off the bench. You had Josh Richardson, and you also had Doug McDermott. Now that you're losing Josh Richardson, that bench is going to be, left with a kind of a gaping hole there. So again, the first unit of the Spurs wasn't something that really jumped out at you, and now with the second unit missing one of their veterans, it's time to, I think, embrace the tank now and just come to the realization that this team is not going to be that great moving forward. So a lot of losses are coming in the Spurs' future.
And I will just add, Houston needs to watch out. Who's also the worst team in the NBA? Is it who has the worst late record? It's in the East. I can't remember.
Wasn't it Orlando?
Orlando, okay, or whoever it is, whoever 20, 29 and 30 are. I just know Houston's one of them. It's Charlotte, okay, because I remember the Spurs are like just a game behind, half a game behind them. I'm about to show that on the screen right now. So yes, so Houston and Charlotte need to watch out because this Spurs team is coming for that number one, to have the worst record. Because just think about this, Joe. I have this model that I created, and it's after every game, and I just kind of run the numbers of the players, how they perform. Jakob and Josh Richardson were in the top 3 of best players on Wednesday against the Raptors when the Spurs lost. So again, you just got rid of 2 of the players right now because this team where they're at with these injuries that were actually very productive for the team, and now you're asking them to go out on the and try to win a game when they're on this 10-game losing streak. It's going to be tough. Going into that Detroit game on Friday, I thought maybe, hey, this is when they're going to end that losing streak. But now when you look just on paper, the Pistons have a better roster is what it looks like at this point from where things are, especially with all the injuries that San Antonio is dealing with. Real quick on Charles Bassey before we move on to the next topic, I do want to note that he has played in 24 games with San Antonio, and the maximum he can play is 50 games. And once they get to 50 games, then he has to be converted to an NBA contract, or they have to release him from his 2-way contract. So again, the Spurs have 27 left, so they could barely squeak this out as long as they don't make him play in every single game. So again, if they want to keep Bassey on the 2-way contract, as long as he doesn't play on every night with San Antonio in their games, he should be okay making it to the end of the season with that max of 50 games. And yeah, we'll kind of see what happens there. And so that's kind of been like the main part of this episode. Is I just wanted to go over the trades with Joe here and kind of what their team looks like. And we'll just talk real quick, Joe, about where they stand, because like normal episodes, I revisit the games for the week. So they've only played 2 games since the last Spurscast that I recorded. They went 0-2, of course, that we're talking about here. So the rodeo road trip started on Monday. They were at Chicago. They lost by 24 points. Chicago blew them out in the fourth quarter, which is what that should say. The best player in the game was Keldon Johnson for San Antonio. Then on Wednesday, they went to Toronto. They lost by 14. Toronto controlled comfortably from late the third quarter on. Again, best player on the court for San Antonio was Keldon Johnson. They should have gone 0-2. They went 0-2. They're still 20th on offense, still 30th on defense, 14-41 overall, 14th out west. And again, I think that they can end up falling to 15th out west with against the Rockets. They're on that 10-game losing streak for the second time this season. They're 0-2 on the rodeo road trip. They have the 3rd worst record in the league, but again, they're just a half game ahead of Detroit. It's actually Detroit. Okay, so Detroit needs to watch out, and Houston need to watch out. San Antonio is coming for that the odds there, and that's important because, like we see here, just the fact that the Spurs have the 3rd worst record, yes, it means they have a 14% chance of the overall number 1 overall pick, but they could fall to as far back as 7th in a lottery. And if you have the worst record, the worst you can fall is 5. So again, that's the difference there. Why it's kind of important to end up with just the flat out the worst record. And then lastly, I did the draft simulations before recording this, and it took me 10 tries to get the Spurs with the number 1 pick for Victor Wembanyama. So again, that is not, it's not no guarantee that even with having a horrible record this year and being the worst team, there's no guarantee you end up getting Victor Wembanyama. What are your thoughts, Joe, on how this team has been performing? I know that now that's going to have a whole new roster going forward.
Well, if you want to, just go ahead and copy and paste, you can just go ahead and say that, the Spurs are always going to fall behind in the first quarter. And then some way, somehow, even though they start making a miraculous comeback in the third or make it interesting in the fourth quarter, they all but unravel. So, it's just copy and paste moving forward every single game. You kind of know what's going to happen. But regardless of that, and looking at those intangibles as far as them losing, you just got to look and see the more of the growth, as I had stated, even before the season even started. It's about the growth of the younger core. So as long as you can go ahead and see some growth there from some of those younger players, especially, your rookies, that's a good thing moving forward. And with, Jakob Poeltl not going to be there in the starting lineup, and now you're losing Josh Richardson. Maybe Coach Pop might go ahead and give some of these younger players some more run, because at this point you got really nothing to lose, and that would excite Spurs fans, even though that they know the season is pretty much a wash. But looking to see some of these younger players get some more playing time would kind of lift the spirits and make things a little bit more palatable moving forward, as the season starts waning on here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerning things about Devontae Graham getting added to the team is like you don't want. I feel like you want to see like Malachi Branham continue to get minutes, like running the one. You want to see Blake Wesley get minutes, and that's the only thing I do worry about is like what if like because he's a veteran now, Devontae Graham. What if they put him in the rotation and let him run more backup point guard or even starting point guard with Trey Jones out right now, and he's taking away those opportunities from the younger players like Blake Wesley needs those minutes, Malachi Branham, and then even in the front court, Jeremy Sohan I feel like is going to get a lot more responsibility whenever he is healthy again. So again, I think you're right, Joe. That's what you got to look for as far as the positives for where this team stands going forward is, what progress do those young players get to make it with these extra possessions, extra minutes, those kind of things. All right. So thank you to Joe for joining me on this episode of the Spurscast and also for mixing and producing the episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.